Hello and welcome to our webinar today. My name is Dave Miller. I'm the president at eMAM. And thank you for your interest in today's webinar on our support for live workflows. Let me do a little housekeeping. So we're going to be recording today's session. Let us know if you want the slides or recording of today's session. And we'll be answering questions mostly at the end. There's a question window. You can type in any questions you might have. We're going to have another session if you'll be awake in 13 hours, 14 hours, mostly for our friends in Asia. But thank you for your interest today. Let me turn it over to my colleague, Chuck Bulow. He's our VP of Business Development and our friend and collaborator with Drastic Technology, James Brooks, the CTO. Thank you for your interest and thanks for logging in today.
All right, thanks, Dave. So what we're going to do is kind of go over some of the setup and configuration of what we do for live ingest, edit, and delivery. So the idea and the concept here is that with eMAM, we're a media asset management system, and typically for years we've been, file-based. So once you had a file, you would upload to the MAM system and then be able to produce and edit and then deliver and all those kind of good things. Well, what we've done is we've now added eMAM Live, which allows you to take in streams in SDI or cloud. We'll talk about cloud here at the end, but the idea is a live footage coming in from cameras, from streams and SDI from tape, IP as well. And we'll talk about some of the different formats. I'll allow James to kind of speak to that. But the ability then within eMAM is the fact that you can go in, capture the footage live, and actually log and edit and clip, subclip, bring into, say, Adobe Premiere and start cutting and editing while it's being captured. And then the idea would be is that then you can take that and deliver that to social media or broadcast or VOD sites and so on. So that's really the concept of this webinar today, is to kind of talk about how we process live footage coming into the MAM system and then cut it up and then be able to edit it and then deliver it in the system. So let's go ahead and jump to the next. So first couple of slides, I want to talk about typically what's required when you're doing live footage. So in capturing live events and things. So typically there's hardware on site to capture from the cameras, from a switcher, line cut, multicam footage, and so on. That footage then has to be captured and stored somewhere. So on a master file storage, like a SAN, high-speed storage, and so on. And typically you'd capture like the high-res media for later use for editing and so on. And in a lot of cases, customers want to tag that media, add markers, maybe on a sporting event, scores and highlights and things like that, and then be able to edit those highlights and quickly get those up to a site for broadcast in a package and deliver that. So this is typically what is needed and so on. And then kind of talking through some of the hardware devices that are out there. Telestream, of course, has their Lightspeed capture device to do that. There's other encoders like Bluefish, AJA, and Blackmagic as well. These then encode that sync coming in with time code and the video and so on from multiple cameras coming in, from tape, from wherever it might be. These hardware devices actually then produce a codec for us then to create a growing file. And then that growing file allows you then to edit that. You can look at proxy, do the time codes will be synced, and then be able to cut and trim and that kind of thing. But typically what you want is a codec that James will talk about that's more of a growing file. And that growing file allows us then to, do the live edits and so on. Now, typically what you'd have is some kind of software, like James's software on the right-hand side there. Telestream has theirs as well to be able to go in and start triggering that capture. So that could be like a scheduled capture, could be a crash record, could be multiple cameras coming in, multiple codecs as well coming in and so on. Or not codec, but produced codecs, but different types of feeds, SD, HD, types and so on. And it depends on the hardware and the software that you're managing to kind of control what is coming in. And going into the eMAM system, then we'll talk about James and Drastic Technology, then that encodes that for us as well. But again, you start to have like some kind of crash record software to be able to manage that. And typically these are actually web-based as well. So we'll kind of talk that through. As I mentioned, you do need some high-speed storage for that growing file to land from the hardware that's being captured. And with that, then editors are able to then pick up that growing file and then start creating highlights. So you could typically go in and open up Adobe Premiere locally where the high-speed storage is and start viewing that. They update, like they have a little setting in Premiere, we'll show you. But in their setting, you know, how often does it update? And so you can actually scrub through forwards and backwards of what frames have been captured and then be able to edit those on that growing file. So that's typically what we're talking about. Now, in other needs, typically what will happen is they'll have like a person either on site cutting the show and cutting up packages, sending off to VOD sites and so on. Now, on live streams as well, I mean, of course, we'll talk about this, but live streams, you can actually send that live stream up to a site, you know, your you know, channel or a website or, you know, some kind of streaming channel that you have. But of course, on the edit side, in grabbing those edits from the live capture and then, you know, logging those and editing those, typically you have like an Adobe Premiere or even Final Cut as well. That's possible, and Avid doing that. But locally, they would typically be, you know, editing that footage. Now, the challenge becomes when you have remote editors, and we'll kind of talk through kind of how we would be able to do those kind of things within the eMAM system and using Drastic technology as well. Okay, so in a combined solution, what we've done is with Drastic and painstaking hours by James Brooks and his team and coming up with the different players and encoders and so on, we're able now to take in certain files, file types and so on, convert those, and then be able to provide within the eMAM system the actual viewing of that proxy, and then cutting, editing, logging, delivering, those kind of things. We're able to do that. So like in some of our clients, what they have is on site, they have servers with Drastic NetX code server inside with the software attached or connected to the encoding hardware that I mentioned, like Bluefish, the AJA and Telestream and Blackmagic as well. Those typically will then create the original codec, and then James and the Drastic technology with NetX code server will then convert those to that available what we call an R10. We'll talk about it in a second, but the R10 file is able then to see within the eMAM system. You can actually then see that video coming in and start logging those clips. Now, if you're not familiar with eMAM, we've been in business for quite a while now. The eMAM system has been available for quite a while, where typically what we do is we bring in footage, files, camera footage, images. We can even bring in PowerPoints, you know. So we manage all that type of content. We organize it into what we call categories, and then allow the editors to connect to that media, search for the different media that they have permission to see, package up material, review and approve, share, edit, collaborate, deliver, and then of course archive. That's really our platform and what we do. And then with Drastic and the live connection now, it gives us even a little bit more capability within the eMAM system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to James real quick and have him go through the next couple of slides to explain a little bit about NetX code server. James?
Thanks, Chuck. Yeah, so the NetX code server basically was designed to combine a number of our previous technologies with digital disc recorders, IP capture, SDI capture, and clipping and conversion into a single server. That server then can support, depending on how you want to configure it, a number of live inputs that can then be fed directly into eMAM, into Avid, into Adobe for live editing, as well as proxy editing, and the proxy files which are fully time code and closed captioned and all that, can be used to develop clips on either the proxy side or on the main side. So basically, on the input side, you have either a baseband, which can be 12G, 6G, 3G, regular SDI. The base NetX code server supports 4. With more effective hardware, you can support 8. And we can convert those into a number of codecs. We always convert one into a proxy, which is an H.264 proxy, which is what eMAM uses to do live logging and live marking of the file. And then for the high-res file, it would depend on your environment. You can go to an OpenMXF format, which is read directly by Adobe Premiere in the Adobe tool set without any extra drivers. You can go to what they call an AvidAMT, which can be fed into an interplay or used locally for edit while capture. If you want to use things like MOV ProRes or transport streams or various other things for other workflows, we also have the ability, a plugin for Avid and a plugin for Adobe to be able to treat those as real-time editing files. Similar to the SDI input, we also have IP inputs, and currently we support RTSP, UDP, RTP, and now SRT, where we can pull compressed video streams from professional and consumer level encoders, and then either rewrap those into files on the storage, or actually convert them again to those two kinds of files where we have, again, a high res that's editable while it's capturing, and a proxy file that's directly in eMAM for use as soon as you start recording. So with those, you can use protocols like SMPTE 2110 or 2022-6. You can have NDI, TRO1. The RTP, UDP are generally transport streams, and inside them you can have 264 or HEVC or JPEG 2000. We can accept all those formats. And then on the back end, it's the same set of files that we can create for SDI, we can create for the IP input. So that basically gives you a huge number of ways to bring in your live streams and get them into eMAM. Once they're inside, you can use all of eMAM's tools to actually mark, decide on clips you're interested in, decide on parts you're interested in, and then right inside of eMAM, you can say, I want, say, time code 1 hour to 1 hour 5, something happened that's interesting. I want to send it out in a number of formats. So you can actually use the delivery mechanism, which will call back into our NetX code server and clip either the proxy or the high res, depending which one you need, to be able to immediately send those out to social media, send them out to other clipping services, any other software that can read files like MP4 and MXF and AVI and MOV. So basically you have a complete mini editing and clipping system all running real time from any of your IP or SDI inputs.
Great. All right. And James, one thing we've also added with your technology is your player within, and do you want to explain a little bit about the R10 a little bit, and just kind of talk about how that is kind of replaced by, your player is replaced by ours or yours inside of the eMAM system. So this is kind of where you'd be able to do all the edits and cuts and so on, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And the great thing is that inside of eMAM, the player is seamless. You just see a player, and if it needs to use ours for real-time editing, it uses ours. If not, it uses the traditional player. The R10 files themselves are the technology that we use to be able to do a lot of the real-time work with files. So it stands for real-time index, and what we have is basically a sidebar file that is recording where everything is going in the main file that we can read while it's still open. Most files, you have to actually close them and create their indices and their metadata before you can reopen them. With this one, we can open the R10 file, find all the information we need for all the audio tracks, video tracks, closed captioning, multiple time code, metadata, pull those in, and be able to use them either in the HTML5 player within eMAM itself, but also in all of the clipping operations. So if you're recording a file like an AVI or an MOV that can't be read while it's open, the R10 allows us to actually clip out the audio and video with or without transcode. We can convert it on the fly, but if not, you can just clip out the original data, put it in a new closed file to be pushed to any kind of downstream editing solution. The other advantage for RTIN files on the back end is that we use them as part of our partial file restore system. So because you're capturing live and generating these RTIN files, once your event is over, say you've got an 8-hour event and you want to push that event up into S3, if you want to then get clips from that, you don't want to have to pull down the whole thing to do the clipping. So what you can do inside of eMAM itself is use the proxy to find the timecode points, and then it will tell us to go and pull just that information via the RTIN from S3, doing the minimum amount of download so it's as fast as possible to create a new file locally of the information you're interested in.
Perfect. Thanks, James. All right.
No problem.
So kind of going through, first off, we'll talk about an on-premise deployment. So we have a couple of clients, large clients doing this. They range from 4 channels to 16 channels at any one point in time. And so the process here, as James had mentioned, coming in, you usually have like an SDI feed coming in this case on premise, and that could be coming simply from a tape deck. It could be coming from cameras, multi-cameras, could be coming from a switcher, pretty much any of those SDI feeds that are coming in. And as James had mentioned, we have servers there that then capture that or encode that using that hardware technology we talked about. So Bluefish or Aja or Blackmagic or even Telestream as an option as well. But the idea is that the software and the encoders are actually on the same server. And so at that point, James creates his magic for the live going into the eMAM system. Typically, you have, like I showed you, the scheduler or like the crash record, and having the ability to go ahead and schedule a bunch of events that are to be captured if they're timed. If not, concerts and things like that may not always start on time, or sporting events. So you can actually then go ahead and just set up a crash record or a time to start. And then as it comes into the eMAM system, obviously you can edit that footage coming in. So in this case here, like, with some of our clients, they have like an MXF file coming in that lands as well through the encoder. They have an R10 file and an H.264. That's all being processed through one channel. And each server, as James had mentioned, handles up to 4. So if you need more channels, then we would add more servers and more NetXcode server software to then do the encoding for those formats. And with that, then the eMAM system reads then that R10 file. The H.264 is kind of after the fact a little bit, because once the file closes, that H.264 becomes the proxy. So the great thing within eMAM, even after you capture the capture is over or the event is over and you stop the capture, that MXF and H.264 become available immediately within the eMAM system as an asset as well. So the R10 then is displayed within the eMAM system as a real-time feed. And again, you can scrub back and forth and go up to live or start from the beginning and then start doing your editing and cutting from there on that. As James had mentioned as well, through eMAM or directly, you can open up Adobe Premiere with that file and the growing file, and then be able to edit also through Adobe Premiere if you'd like. In the eMAM system, typically you're doing hard cuts. So you're doing subclips. You could create new assets and deliver those, or you can create subclips, drop those into Adobe Premiere, and then start editing and using those. That's also possible. But typically in the eMAM system, quick hard cuts, and maybe what you'll do is use the transcoder on the outbound side to actually then put in a bug, maybe stitch some things together within the eMAM system through NetXcode server. We'll have the ability, it's not quite ready yet, but we'll have the ability then to stitch multiple hard cut segments together into one file and then output to social media, VOD, or broadcast as well. So this is kind of the process and how it's all done. Again, on site, we would have that hardware technology to create that master file format that you need. So, excuse me. So that's really key is we're creating that master file that's a growing file, and then James and the NetXcode server does their magic for us. This is typically what you would see for scheduling or crash record. So you can go ahead and schedule something, put in events, put in the start, the stop. put in some metadata, and then again, that goes into the eMAM system. And then, as we mentioned, the Drastic Xcode server creates that R10 file for us to produce. So again, this is where that hardware is in that server. The codecs are created, and then the eMAM system reads those. On the live speed side, of course, the Lightspeed live capture box, or not box, but server, would actually not be in the Xcode server. It would be two separate items. And so the Lightspeed server, you can utilize their software to start to create the MXF file. Xcode would pick that up, create the R10 and the MP4 file for us. And then, of course, then we read the R10 for live, and then use the Drastic player for that. So this is kind of what you look at within the eMAM system. Anything that has live, it's a little blurry on this shot here, but the idea really is that you can then detect which of these assets are actually live. And then from that, you use the markers or subclips on the right-hand side there to go ahead and watch it, scrub it. You have a JKL full control here to go back and forth or fast forward to a spot, and then create a subclip, highlights and things like that for sporting events or concerts and so on, or even corporate events as well. So this is kind of the simple interface that you would have for that. So again, live streams come in on the R10. You start logging and editing those. You can notice on the subclip in the lower right, you'll see delivery. So again, I can actually go in and create a segment and then subclip that and quickly hit a delivery button with a workflow that delivers to social media or broadcast or VOD sites as well on that. And then the logging basically looks like this with markers and so on that I can go in and set up my different times. This is our rough cut editor. So again, this is the hard cuts. So I can drop in from the browse widget and drop in those subclips I'm creating, drop those in here, and then send it to the transcoder for finishing as one asset for delivery. And then again, this is, like I mentioned, this is the delivery side. So we could deliver a subclip with XML as an example, if you need to require metadata going out with your sources as well. Now we're also hooked up with Dixon Sports. So Dixon Sports has a live logger as well. And with live logging, you have a full sporting or corporate event or even a custom event as well. You can get specific with the tagging and so on. So you have different teams going on. You have players, and as different sports, cricket to basketball to baseball to soccer to football, whatever it might be, you can tag all that, and that actually comes in as markers information as well. The Dixon Sport also supplies the ability to actually create their own subclips as well. So again, all this metadata could also be dropped into the eMAM system. And again, for history of sporting events or things like that, I can actually go back and look at different events way back when and go specifically to a location for that. Now, on the remote side, this is kind of interesting. Now, with the eMAM system on-premise or in the cloud, you do also have the ability to have a remote producer or editor looking at the eMAM interface director and logging into the eMAM system, watching live feeds coming in, and actually creating those subclips and hitting delivery. So remote side, you could actually go in and actually create those subclips, deliver those subclips, and then away you go. But that could be from a remote location. So that eMAM system, as long as we have internet connection, VPN or access, we can also set up the browser browsing capabilities in a DMZ zone to actually then give the ability to preview the live feeds and then doing the subclipping and so on. So quite unique there as well. On the Dixon Sports as well, you do have remote capabilities to log into a feed that's coming in that James produces for us, and then they can also do a remote logging as well. So again, not everybody has to be, excuse me, on premise to kind of do logging and clipping and things like that. So, so again, with all the delivery highlights and everything else, we can all do that remotely as well. And then on the Premiere side, this is kind of interesting. So if the system's on-prem, the high resolution's all on-prem, and we have a remote editor, the best thing to do at that point would actually be to go ahead and create highlight reels as separate assets and deliver those and localize those to a remote editor. So you can actually do this via, the panel. We have an eMAM panel built into Adobe Premiere. So you can just load up the eMAM panel, look at all the subclips that are available to you to create packages for producing and editing and so on, and then send it back to the eMAM system that whatever you produce, and then use eMAM to actually do the delivery as well. You can deliver locally if you like. Media Encoder does have delivery to social media and things like that. But the idea in this concept here for Premiere is that you cut within Director subclips, create those as assets, download those to a remote editing workstation as well. So this is kind of typical of what a Premiere panel would look like. You grab the footage that's coming in. You can grab it as soon as it's a file. So if somebody is creating assets and so on with subclips, I can then download those and localize and do a local edit with those as well. Okay. On the editing live with Premiere, there is a setting in there that you can actually go in and have it refreshed, let's say, every 30 seconds. And so as the footage is coming in that Drastic produces for us, you can actually go in and then have it refreshed within Adobe Premiere, and then also do the cutting as well. This typically would be done on site or on premise or near the footage that's there. So now this is a cloud-based event for live. We've just now set up one here in Nashville, where I'm based, for live feeds coming in. They have 4 channels coming in with different streams. And then James and the NetX Code server, they convert that then into R10 and give you the ability then to kind of create then a live event. So the streams in this case are actually coming into a cloud-based private environment in this case, but it could be IBM Cloud or AWS or Google or Microsoft Azure and so on. It doesn't, it doesn't really matter. In that case, what happens is that footage is landing somewhere in available storage. The NetX Code server takes then that information, decodes it, and then creates that R10 file for the eMAM system to read in the cloud. So again, this is all based in the cloud, no hardware locally, other than whatever hardware is being used to create the stream. Okay, and as James had mentioned, he does support the RTSP right now, but he's also looking at RTMP as available streams. And then what we do is we read that R10 file that he produces for us, and then through the live director interface, I can actually then read that. Again, these are all remote editors. So the idea would be is that somebody could just go in, create a subclip from anywhere around the country, around the world. As long as they have access to this cloud-based system, they can then go ahead and create those subclips, create them as new assets, have editors download those, or edit directly from the cloud using Teradici or Lucid Link technology as well. If you do have any questions about that, we can talk further about that a little later. All right, so a lot of information we just provided you. These are some of our clients that we have going now. A lot of our clients now are moving more towards the cloud environment. That's why on the live events, James and Drastic have been talking with us about kind of producing and developing more live edits, live production, live edits, and everything else, all cloud-based as an environment. So as we go forward here, you'll probably see a little bit more technology built into the eMAM system to kind of help us grow that concept with everything in the cloud. With everything that's going on in the world today, we can pretty much do and stream and capture and edit pretty much all in the cloud now as well. So without further ado, I'll turn it back over to David, and then maybe we can kind of run through some of the questions that you all have.
Great. Well, thanks so much. Thanks you, Chuck and James. And while people are typing in questions real quickly, so lots of great information. Where can be on the website? Who can people talk to about getting this set up?
Yeah, so I think what's best is probably emailing eMAM. With eMAM, I would say the sales at emamonline.com or emamcloud.com would probably be best. they can talk with us, and then what we will do is bring in a system integrator, or if you are a system integrator, we would like to talk with you about putting packages together for your clients as well.
Great, thank you. And what about AI tagging?
So that's an interesting point. So we were talking with a company called Dazzle out of France the other day, and the concept was they'd like to do recordings of interviews or people or news events and things like that, and then they'd like to be able to look up that information later. And so utilizing the eMAM system in the cloud, you can also connect then with AI technology from Microsoft or AWS or IBM, any one of the services, and send the content that's in the eMAM system, the portion of content that you'd like to send up there to the services, and then get feedback for facial recognition, annotations, specific words spoken, and speech to text. All of that information, when it comes back in from the AI services from a proxy that you send up to them, that goes into the MAM system, and I can virtually look up anything with anybody with, I want to look up something that somebody said, specifically go to that one spot and trim it, and then create a package or something with that. So AI technology in eMAM in the cloud is fantastic for, searching for anything. We have also clients that are looking for B-roll footage. So they'll say, I want a shot of that park, that boat, that tree, that blue sky, whatever it might be. You can go in and look at images or video or even audio on the audio side, whatever has been spoken. You can search specifically for those assets, find what you need, and then download or use within a production. So, any other questions there, Dave?
Yes, how do you work the mute button? Okay, next question. Sorry. And then could the system work with live events either on-premise or in the cloud?
Yes. So it just depends on the situation. If you're, let's say it's on-premise, and so you have hardware producing a video stream, or you have hardware producing, high quality video and so on. The requirements of bandwidth, eMAM and Drastic can kind of work with you on that. It just kind of depends on how you capture your footage. And then the eMAM system in the cloud could bring in that content, or if you have local content, we do have hybrid connections and configurations where maybe the hardware's or the high quality content is stored locally from the event, and you will have remote editors. Well, we can actually make that content available to them, via the eMAM system and platform through what we have services basically running locally, and then we put the eMAM brain and the metadata and the proxies in the cloud, and those users could actually then see that footage coming in and then start editing and make that available. You also then, like the one client we have with the 4 channels coming in, they have hardware locally. They take that stream and convert it. It's converted in the cloud that James can pick up, and then Drastic converts that to that R10 and makes it available for us as well. That's actually pretty unique because they also have good bandwidth between the site where they're at and the cloud. And so as long as you have good bandwidth, you can support a full cloud-based system as well. So hopefully I answered that question.
Yes, well, we got to thank you, so that's always good. Great, and looking over, I think we answered most of the other questions. Let us know if you had any other questions. And we have recorded today's session. Let us know if you want a copy of either recording or the PowerPoint. And again, you can reach out to the websites here, or we have system integrator partners kind of worldwide, to help you set up systems. But if there are no additional questions, thanks for logging in today, and everybody have a great day. Stay healthy, stay safe, and thank you so much for your interest today.